Uh, Good afternoon, early evening. I know that it's between me and the beer, and I really appreciated you being here. I'm going to talk about design, and I'm going to talk about design for technology, which is something I spent more than half my life dealing with. You see in the background a little bit running reel of our studio in San Francisco. I think we are now in a very interesting intersection where traditional design methodologies are somewhat forced to adapt to a new reality that is coming upon us with the artificial intelligence and robotics and autonomous things that we need to very quickly try to assimilate into our society, or else things are going to go wrong. Generally, I started my career as an industrial designer, very much fanatic about form, details, colors, and so on and so forth. Yet what I found out through the last 10, 15 years that my role has changed, and with that, the role of my agency, NewDealDesign, has changed. And we are now more in a space of strategic technology design, something that I'll try somehow in the back, kind of as a, I'd say kind of a woven thread through this discussion that I'm going to share with you, explain what is technology design. We've been very much associated with Fitbit and the design through the years, the last 10 years more or less. We're now out of Fitbit, but as far as the Fitbit experience, I got to say that a lot of it is still very relevant. People are still touched by beauty. There are still some fundamental problems with putting hardware on the human body. There are a lot of societal issues, a lot of cost issues, a lot of form giving, material setting, and so on and so forth. And that form of the more traditional industrial design is still very much relevant and is a huge force for, let's say, the betterment of technology in general. However, through the years, and the last few years in a more pronounced ways, things have been more and more complicated. So the next project I'm going to share is a project called Dojo, and it's actually dealing with cyber security. And the notion is, how do you do something like that without presenting it as a threatening or semi-militaristic device, which is typically the discussion when you're talking about cybersecurity. This device is supposed to be at home and let you be aware of all the devices that are now connected to the internet at your home. And if any one of these devices suddenly start chirping data to, let's say, North Korea, you should be aware of it. So the design of something like that became a very complicated topic. So we need to first create some kind of a brand envelope, if you wish, in which Dojo is somewhat more calm and collected persona rather than a cobra or whatever this type of names that usually associated with cybersecurity. The object itself actually is comprised of two objects, and one of them is just giving you nice light patterns. The reason for that is that most of these boxes of internet connections are actually in the garage or in some kind of a closet, and you usually don't pay attention to them. In this case, you better pay attention because you may need to take action. So we essentially added an object here that is just a user interface. It looks like a pebble, and every once in a while some light will appear on it, and it will call your attention. And if everything is hunky-dory and your app will show green, nothing needs to happen, and it will just be some kind of a beautiful, soothing pattern. Now, what you see on the app is kind of a chat app, And Dojo is a persona. We are talking about an AI device that actually collects a lot of data and understands what is a normal behavior, what is abnormal behavior, and calls your attention only when needed. And we decided to personify the Dojo, and it basically will chat with you when things go wrong. And when things go wrong, the Pebble will actually scream for attention, and the app will explain you what needs to be done. So what you see here is kind of a next level in design involvement. Suddenly we invent a new object that was not there. It was a major decision by the technologies to actually add an object, and the notion of adding an object came with a lot of cost, came with a lot of issues, but it was justified because of the relevancy of that object to the overall offering. The second thing that you see here is that we use this object for UI, and that's a kind of a new phenomena. We sometimes need to really push forward explicitly user interface. So it's no longer just user interface in case needed, but you actually, in some critical functions, need to force the presence of the UI beyond the norm. And last is the appearance of personification. Technology is no longer XYZ 17-1. It's something that needs to have a persona, that needs to have a relationship with the household, and in doing so becomes more effective, more fluent, more basically part of your life. So this is kind of a step from the traditional industrial design or design in general into something that is more comprehensive. Now, we are now moving, and in my studio there are about 4 or 5 projects that deal with a new category of beings, if you wish. These are autonomous objects, robots, things that fly, things that move, and we're going to have some interesting relationship, if you wish, tenuous relationship with these objects. These things will move, will probably sometimes shove you around and force you to basically walk around them. So just a little bit, the center bottom delivery robot, it's actually an anecdotal story. My daughter has just gotten her driving license, and we were practicing. In California, you're allowed to take it. Basically, dad takes daughter to study driving, and this thing appears on a sidewalk, waiting to cross the street. And we start having half-joking, half-serious discussion if a robot gets a right of way when you're turning right or not. So these are things that were never discussed before, but they are now real. So, you know, in the US, currently 5 states allow robots like these delivery robots to use sidewalks. And that's going to be an issue. At the same time, in San Francisco, there's already a petition to block them from using the sidewalks. So here you start understanding that there is some potential conflict between what we glorified, if you wish, for the last 15, 20 years, which is the tech industry, and what us as humans in our structure of society are used to or willing to allow. And I don't know how this is going to sort itself out, but I know that I have a role in it as a designer to try to smooth things out and try to figure things out. And this is where the next step of design is coming. So traditionally, designers dealt with beauty. And I'm a firm believer beauty is very much a human need. I think it's very much an intuitive, innate sense of harmony and purpose. And it's something that you could see in classic car design as an amazing example of human creation. However, beauty today is not enough. We need to think beyond that. And we are talking now about what I could call deep design, which is basically getting designers to the round tables with the technologies and the business people and start dealing with hardcore issues of architecture, hardware architecture, software architecture, forcing interactions and UI devices both externally and internally. I'm talking about supposedly a car. A car is not only interfacing internally, it's also interfacing externally, or like this robot that should be interfacing externally just as much as internally. We're talking about personification, as I mentioned. We're talking about socialization of these devices. Again, can a robot or should a robot get a right of way? Why won't it just wait? Cars go first, let's say, and robots later. Let's put it differently. You know, pedestrian first, cars second, and then robots. So these were never discussed issues. Now they are relevant. And beyond all that, there is this very strong sense of making a business sense out of this mess of AI and robotics. And it's unclear what is the business model currently. Does it really make sense to send a pizza in this robot that takes twice as much as Johnny on a pair of bicycles? Doesn't make sense to me, but maybe somebody will prove me wrong. So I'm going to start dealing with some issues that we need to deal with. So what you see here is a very famous cross street in Shibuya, Japan. There are about 1,000 people crossing at the same time. And the interesting thing about these 1,000 people crossing at the same moment is they do a little dance. They understand who is coming in front of them and what they're about to do, and they kind of move around and somehow manage to get on the other side without running into each other. I call it mingling. I don't know of any robot today that could do that. And frankly, I don't think it's going to be even possible in the next 5 or 10 years. It's understanding something very nuanced. It's understanding body language. It's understanding eye contact. It's understanding culture. And obviously in Japan, the culture is different than in Germany. And in the US, it's different than in Germany or Japan. Okay? So let's move forward. This is Vietnam. And this guy is crossing the street. And nobody stops. Nobody stops. But he knows that he's kind of safe, even though at the end he will actually be very victorious and so on. But what's happening there, he locks eyes with the moped drivers, and they somehow know where to go because they understand the mutual intent. What's his intent and what's theirs and so on. So this dance is crazy, but it's part of human culture. This is how people behave in some places, and there are some reasons for that. Let's move forward. I don't know any robot or any AI that can understand a child's intent standing on a sidewalk. Are these guys about to cross, just holding hands because they like to, just dreaming? So what we know as adults is that you better slow down and start trying to lock eyes with the kids so you would understand what they have in mind. And once you lock eyes, you more or less can understand what's happening. Now, we talked about understanding the intent of kids. You know this guy's intent, and you better not pay attention to it. So this is another element that you need to create rules of what not to pay attention to. At the same time, you better pay attention to this lady, and she is just gesturing. And again, the gestures are different in different places. And we also have exceptions. So this is a Californian road, and these guys are driving against the rules. They're driving on the wrong side, and it's clear why, because there is road work. So all that needs to be explained, all that needs to be immediately within a second understood. Now, one of the things that we are blessed with as humanity, we are diverse. So we talked about Vietnam. Germany has amazing roads. Roads are different. The rules are different. And we need technology to be pervasive in order to make sense from a technology perspective, from business perspective, from economics perspective. So this is how technology got so big. Basically, you could use the same PC here, and you could use the same PC in Afghanistan, and there is no barrier there. But we are getting to realize that we probably will need different pieces of hardware and software in different places. Okay.
Oh, where's it going? God damn, Bill. Oh my God. Oh, this is so scary. Oh, Jesus, this is my first day out. I'm about to die.
Oh, come on, relax.
So this is a lady that got to drive Tesla, which is a phenomenal company and a phenomenal car for the first time in autonomous mode. And the interesting thing about it, that typically when we talk about technology, we tend to think about a very specific crowd, let's say age 20 to 40. But a lot of the population is way beyond that, and they will need to be part of it. We cannot just throw them by the wayside, you know? We need to get technology that works with people, okay? And Tesla is amazing because you also have this with Tesla.
First mode, when the light goes green.
Oh my God. Holy shit. Oh.
I almost dropped the phone.
Yeah, I can imagine. Grandma did?
Yeah. Everybody does, including me.
Holy hell.
So what you see here is that both sides of that technology, an autonomous car in an amazing situation, sometimes is scary and sometimes is exhilarating. And we need to balance these and use them, you know, in the right way. So far I've been talking in kind of a high level about the challenges. I want to bring some new ideas to the table, and I'm going to share with you a project that we created about half a year ago to show some of the potential with autonomous cars and autonomous things. And we call this project Autonomics, which is about the economics around autonomous things. So if you listen to what media is telling us technology companies want to do, you would assume we're all millennials, we're all supposed to dump the cars and use Uber or someone else now because Uber is in trouble. And we are all supposed to live in urban centers. Unfortunately, this is not the reality. A lot of Americans, and actually a lot of Germans, and a lot of people are living outside walkable urban centers. And they live in either rural areas or suburban areas or areas where car is necessary for modern life. So this is a reality that we need to take advantage of, not try to change so easily. Now, as part of it, we're actually driving a lot, and we're driving a lot doing errands. We are dropping the kids at school, going to buy something, picking up some laundry, and so on and so forth. This is a daily routine of a lot of people outside, again, the urban centers. Now, we need to take that and try to work with that. So I'm going to share with you some ideas about how we can deliver products and services to where you are rather than forcing you to get to those products and services. And maybe it will allow you to live outside a city and, you know, live in a nice little village and still be part of the digital economy. So I'm going to talk about 3 moments, and these 3 moments will allow you to somewhat kind of frame possible scenarios for autonomous vehicles and other things to actually make our life richer. So we created a thing, we actually been prototyping, it's called LeechBot. And the LeechBot, like the name, is leeching to cars. And what you see here is a one-wheel device that is capable of driving in traffic, splitting lanes, and attached to your car, because it could synchronize with your autonomous car, very much like airplane refueling, and actually hand over a package. So let's look at the scenario. Let's say you took your favorite date out, and suddenly somebody crosses the street with flowers, and wow, you forgot something. You want to buy flowers, but you're already in the car, and you're already moving somewhere. But, you know, we do have a flower shop just across the street, and the flower shop could actually send you flowers using this robotic device, the LeechBot. So this is one simple scenario, and it could be for coffee, it could be for, you know, FedEx package, it could be for whatever you want. Now, when you're actually looking at where these things are going to happen, they're going to happen in some kind of service zones, and service zones will actually repurpose areas that are currently becoming dilapidated. Let's say the old McDonald's around the corner of the street that nobody passes by now because it's a dead zone. So these are areas that could be effective, you know, basically repurposed to our economy and allowing us to deliver these type of services while you're on the go. Now, let's take it a step further. Let's assume that you're driving outside a city and you just feel like having coffee. So the same mechanism that allows you to synchronize the movement of the LeechBot with the car could allow you to synchronize your car with a larger object, let's say like a bus. And this is what's going to happen. You're going to drive around, and at one point, you'll get tired, and you'll figure out that you could stop and maybe have a drink. And what's going to happen, you're basically going to cross over, very much like you cross between train cars, and you'll go upstairs, you'll get your drink, you'll get your coffee, and your car is going to trail behind, let's say 200 yards, and then when you need it, you're basically going to whistle, and it will come and will pick you up. So this is another scenario how we could get outside and enjoy more of the outdoor scenery rather than the, you know, the urban setting. And finally, when all this is happening, we could actually bring people together to ad hoc rock concerts or events or yoga lessons or whatever. And it's basically kind of a flash mob that goes into a corner that was set for that. And basically, whether it's the larger Zoom rooms or your autonomous car or the little LeechBots, they all could congregate for an hour or two and then disappear. So these are kind of little tidbits of possibilities. And again, this is a project that we initiated just to open our minds and open our clients' minds. Obviously, this is not something that is coming to market anytime soon, but it is part of a new possibilities in design and new possibilities in technology that we all should kind of open up and embrace and allow us to socialize into our lives rather than just accept what the media and the tech companies are serving us. So that's supposedly the end. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay.
We'll do a couple of questions off of Slido.com. They want to know, what is the biggest problem you've ever solved with design?
It's an interesting question. One of the assumptions behind it is design is about solving problems. I'm not sure about it. And there's been a phenomena, I guess like 5-10 years ago, that everything was supposedly solved by design. I could say that in general, you could consider the 50, 60, 70 million Fitbits out there some kind of a problem that got solved because people wanted to know if they're moving enough or not. There is a problem with our lifestyle that typically we are not moving around. And if you have a Fitbit, you could basically flick and say, today only 7,700 steps, not too much.
How do you think as a designer? What are the questions you ask yourself? What's your process?
Well, I'm a contrarian, so everything I'm being told or being briefed, I basically park on the side and go to the other side and say, what are these guys telling me that I should think the opposite? So for me, it's very important for designers to be able to think opposite. If people tell you that you need to congregate in urban spaces, why not the opposite? So that's my way of thinking.
How do you extract what a far future user needs and wants? Are you just generating crazy hypotheses?
That's another one of these big elephants in the room. I don't think users know what they want. And frankly, I don't know what I will want in 5 or 10 years. So the way to manage it is to assimilate yourself in people's life and understand what relevant or not you could be. And with that, step by step, you're moving forward. I just want to say something that I'm saying just about to any client, and I'll give you an example of it. I don't think there is any future that is actionable, something that we could really work on beyond 18 months in the technology business. I'll give you an example. I've done a lot of wearables, and the wearables, you could say it's a good industry, bad industry, but nonetheless, it's an industry. If you'll ask me what's going to happen in the wearable industry in 18 months, I'll tell you with honesty, I don't know. And I think we should be somewhat skeptic about big, bold futurism and start moving slower and more deliberately. And I think within a year or two range is a good range to understand societal and cultural matters and move accordingly.
All right, last question. What is the time frame you put on the prototypes you showed today?
This is something we're building right now. I'm talking about the LeechBot. We're building right now, and I think by the end of the year, it will be running errands in the office. We'll see if it's worthy to take it beyond that. But the technology is very much proven. There's nothing futuristic about that. It's just putting the pieces together.
Thank you so much. A huge round of applause for Gadi.
Thank you.